we'll go ahead and get started. All right.
Oh, well, I have to do my talk thing.
Okay, go ahead.
I have to be the bad guy. So we had like 7 people miss the PD this morning. Um, the day after I said I was gonna stop telling everyone when they were missing meetings. So it was real awkward for me because I was like, I was like having like a crisis of conscience. I was like, should I send a message? Um, so this is just me reminding y'all to check your calendars. Everyone that messaged, like responded to me, awesome. You know, we worked it out. So I'm not mad at anyone. There's some people that missed that are currently not in this call right now, so that's super cool. Um, I should really probably start thinking these out before I start talking because I'm just kind of like
Definitely, yeah,
flow of my brain.
for sure.
Um, but yeah, pay attention. Okay,
Yeah, so
goodbye.
we let you guys like, he's not going to message you anymore. So I asked him to message you guys, and yeah, you have however many absences. Just don't use them all, especially not on just forgetting that we have meetings. Oh, Andrew, did you use like Moment React? Is that like a package, a separate one?
Yes, Moment React is a separate library made specifically for React. I have to admit, I don't really understand how it works or how it's different from the regular Moment library. I basically just
Yeah.
basically the way I got to work was by creating a default moment object, seeing the time date format that's put out, and then making all my data match that. So it wasn't very elegant, but I got it to work.
Nice. There's a lot of packages that are like whatever React, the React version that you just don't need React. It doesn't need to be some specific React version. So be on the lookout for those. Like for Moment, I don't know why. It's just a time format. I don't know why that would need, unless it spits out a component or something. But okay, I'm gonna share my screen. I've already done all the setup. We're gonna skip the setup step because I think you guys kind of get it. Or if you guys want to go over that again, we can. What have I done? Yeah. All right, I can't see the chat, so if you have a question, just like yell in the, just like unmute and scream at me. This is going to be in the way. Okay. All right, so we've got the index.js set up over here, and I have the app.jsx set up with like a basic component for app. It just returns a div with the H1. This is just the lab, what they tell you to start with. So I've done all of this, and then we're down to this, starting with the instructions. Yeah, we're gonna get started. You guys have learned the instructions for this one are pretty broad. So your objective should be to create a timeline of chirps, short messages that you post on the Chirper platform. Your timeline should load with at least 3 chirps. This is our starting point. We're gonna try and get the timeline up and working. Then we're gonna go in and build some inputs tied to, controlled inputs that we can type inside. Those update some state values, and then we use those state values to create a new chirp whenever they click submit. That's pretty much going to be the lab. If you could get that done, you're making a lot of progress. Yeah, so lots of ways that we can do this. Probably my recommendation, if you're starting and having trouble knowing what files or what components to have, just start an app and kind of start building things out. And you can start, once it works, you can kind of separate them into different components. But yeah, we're going to start up here. I'm going to start with the timeline. Like I said, just the 3 chirps at the beginning that display, by default. And I'm going to make it pretty simple. So it's not going to look like really good, with a nav bar and everything. We're just going to get the timeline up so we understand how state works. So let's say my state value, I'm going to call, you could call it timeline, but I think chirps makes more sense, like the actual, because all of this whole array, all that's in it is the chirps themselves, like the data, the message, and the user, stuff like that. So I'll say chirps and set chirps equals use states. And then in the initialized value here, I'm not just going to put an empty array. I'm going to open this array up, and we're going to put the 3 original chirps that we should start with. We're going to put these directly in the state value. We're going to initialize state with the 3 chirps already in there. I'm choosing to do mine as an object because we're going to have multiple data points per chirp. So each chirp is going to have an ID, like a unique value to differentiate them from each other. And we need that in there. We need the ID in there because React is kind of, it needs the ID in there to differentiate them, especially when it's re-rendering things. We're going to have a username for who made that chirp, and a message, which is the actual body of the chirp. Okay. All right, and we're going to start with 3 of these. So I'll just copy this because all of my chirped, like each chirp needs to look exactly the same, have the same properties. If this is a number, then this is a number, ID is a number. Keep them all the same, just different information. Carrots, not that. And then hello. Right. So there's our 3 chirps. This is our initial chirps. Right. Any questions on this part, like the initializing the state values?
So I didn't use an ID.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have any issues, but then, and you're using over the ID, you keep the same number through all 3 of them?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I should have changed those. I'm getting ahead of
But-
myself.
But yeah, I didn't use an ID. So I don't really know what the purpose there, what the difference would be if I did.
All right. So if you don't use an ID, let's go down.
I had an ID, but somebody told me not to use it.
Who told you that? Was it Garrett? I bet it was
Rhymes
Garrett.
with ferret.
No, you need an ID for sure. So it uses the ID to differentiate when it's looking at, like we're going to come down here in a second, and I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to say, or it's not that. I'm going to say chirps dot map, and I'm going to go over each of the chirps and do a map over them. So it's going to kind of map over and generate some JSX or like some HTML for each chirp object that I have, whether that's the 3 that I start with or after I create a new one, it's doing 4. When it's looking at, say there were already 3, the 3 initial chirps on the page, and then I added a new one. When it's looking at what to re-render, it looks at the ID for each one. It uses that as a thing to say like, okay, these 3 haven't changed, but this one is new. So this is what needs to change on the page. So it uses that. If you don't put the ID in there, when you do a map over a data set in React, it'll throw a warning that says each component needs to have a separate key property, and it's using that key property to differentiate them from each other. So I'll throw the IDs off in a bit and we'll see what that looks like. But
Yeah, I was getting that warning. Is that the only other like noticeable difference as far as this lab
Yeah.
concerned, is that it'll just pop up that warning?
yeah. But I mean, every data set that you'll ever see in your life will have an ID, a differentiator between each object, so just
In React.
in anything, in anything ever. If it's a differentiating, if it's like a data set and it's like a list of usernames, they'll all have an ID on there, and yeah. So in React, you would use those. I don't know. Can I build like a really quick, I don't know, let me think. I'm going to try and build a nav and probably be terrible at it, and it's not going to look good. So forgive me when I like revert this all back. Chirper. Let's go down. garbage. Let's just try and get these on the page. Map. All right, so we're going to map over the state array. Chirp is my state object with all the objects into the array with all the objects inside. And then for each chirp, I'm going to call it a chirp. So that's each singular one. For each singular one, I want to return some JSX. So I'm going to put some parentheses right here so that we're automatically returning. Oh, is that what it was? All right. Chirps map. I have no idea what I'm doing. Chirp stop map. And then, so in here is whatever I want to return for each one. Right now, let's just start with like an H3 for the username. So I want to inject the username value for each one right here. So I'll say chirp dot username because I'm accessing each object. And then we'll put below here, maybe like a p tag with the chirp dot message. Give those parent elements and then fix whatever. There we go. This like mapping method here, where you have a state array of how whatever size, and you map over it to generate some JSX for each one. This is like I said, like meat and potatoes React. You should memorize this, understanding this is the state object. It's an array of objects, right? You're mapping over it. You're calling each item in the array as it maps over a chirp, singular of whatever this is. You can call this whatever I want though. And then I'm generating JSX here using an implicit return, like ES6 implicit return. This is a multi-line return with the parentheses. So try and understand this because this is like what you'll be doing a lot of the time. And let's see if that actually worked or what happened to that. There we go. Obviously we have some styling work to do, but now we have our chirps on the page. We have our chirps on the page, and specifically like now if I go in and add a new one programmatically, like if we go and they click the button and they add the new one, then this is mapping over those. So I don't have to like, it doesn't matter how many there are in the array, it'll just put them on the page, you know? So it's flexible. Gonna take a little break there for a second. Everybody still good? Mapping over an array.
Like, this is something I kind of struggled with. I'm like looking at the W3 schools right now on the map, and the way I understand it correctly, so I'm probably way off, but like it seems as if like they have an array, and it's like it seems as like you can actually apply like functionality to that dot mapped array. So is that kind of what's happening? Like you're making an array that's like you can now do stuff to it now. Like it's not just a static array, it's now like a dynamic array. Is that correct in my understanding?
So what's happening here is like we're taking an array of JavaScript objects and we're returning, you know, map returns an array, right?
Mm-hmm.
With all the mutated objects. What we've done to the array is we've turned it from an array of objects from here into an array of JSX expressions.
I'm still trying to understand the JSX too.
Remember, yeah, it's just HTML-like syntax. So I've essentially returned HTML out of this.
Oh, okay.
So this is, I've turned an array of objects, I've mapped over them and returned for each one some JSX, and it's able to render that to the page.
Yeah, I noticed Luke said a lot in the videos, something about like escaping JSX and you have to do the brackets. Does that like related at all, or is that just completely different? So
this took me a while to realize, but anywhere in a return statement where, you know, I can't write JavaScript directly in here. If I say chirps in here, it thinks I'm just writing chirps like put chirps on the page, like the word, you know?
Yeah.
If you want to write some kind of expression, you can write any kind of JavaScript expression that you want, but it needs to evaluate to just JSX, you know? That's why this works, because this ends up being just 3 JSX, you know, essentially like HTML, you know?
That's the hardest thing to wrap my brain around, honestly. Like,
That
So-
is going to take a while to understand. Yeah.
When you make like a class of person, you can't reference like this dot message until you map it, correct? Like how you did, instead of person, you did chirps dot map, and then you could reference chirp dot username and chirp dot message after that. But if you didn't use map, you wouldn't be able to. Is that
Because I'm accessing each index.
okay? I was having trouble with this for like 2 hours the other day and I wasn't using dot map, so that explains it.
Yeah.
was
I
trying
mean,
to,
this is like this is just the array method, you know?
Okay,
It's the array method that we're using specifically here to, because it returns a new array with the values. But
So
honestly, if you just memorize this, it's fine for now.
you're not having to create another component for the chirps with the props of props.username and props.message.
You should do that, but I'm starting with this, and then you can start spreading things out into components, because we're doing like a small, I just want you guys to understand, like, you know, the state. I feel like there's enough going on, but yeah, now I would take this and separate that out. We can go ahead and do that.
But would you normally do the use state before you even create the component that you're?
Yeah, probably. I'd probably do this, honestly, something like this, and then spread this out into a separate component. You seem doubtful.
Oh, I believe you.
Doubt it.
I
Doubt
believe
it.
you.
All right, we'll go in here and create a chirp. I'm going to call this a chirp card. And call it JSX. Let's see. Yeah, 'cause I think, again, you probably don't have to do that, but we do it by habit. Put props up here. We might actually destructure props. That'd be good. So this chirp card is going to be this. So I'll just copy this. We'll cut it even. And then we'll come over here. It's going to return that, format that, right? And then everything becomes props.chirps, whatever. You might see something like I was trying to do the other day, where you have like a destructured object. When you do destructuring up here, this is saying it, like this chirp card is going to receive props. And of those props, I only really care about the username and the message. Like that. That's not how you spell username. And then I can just reference them as username and message. You might see something like that. Then down at the bottom, we need to export defaults. Chirp.
Sorry on so many questions, but you don't need, when you were putting props there, you didn't need that in parentheses.
Nope. Remember, that's just ES6, an ES6 function. If you have only one argument or parameter in your function, you can take off the parentheses.
But it doesn't hurt it if you doesn't change it if you do.
Nope.
Gotcha.
It's still the same thing. You just can take the parentheses off.
But
Just
if you
to
have
confuse the sh-
if you have 2 parameters, you do have to use the parentheses.
correct. If I had like props and blah, and I try to take those off, it's like, no, you can't do that. Right. You'll see that sometimes. I'm trying to show you guys just things that you might see like in examples and things. So it's just not completely new. This is just destructuring the props, just like we destructure an array up here. It's the same thing. I'm receiving a whole value from this use weight, and this is receiving props. It's just, I only care about these 2 values. So really the braces here are the props object. Okay, so we have that. And then here I want to create a chirp card. So let's import chirp card components. Chirp card. Oh, hey, it did it. Look at that. Now chirp card receives those props. So I need to pass down that prop. this message. Same thing, but now we've kind of cleaned this up. This is one giant line now, but still is pretty much the same thing. It's just generating a trip card component. Okay. So now we have the timeline. Now I need to be able to create a new input, and they need to be able to add a new one, you know, so we'll try and create like an input box up here and do that. Create a form, code a form with at least 2 inputs where users can submit new chirps. Okay. And when a new chirp is submitted, it's should be shown back to the user in the timeline. And so, right, since we've done the map over here, whenever we add the new one, I'll be setting the state of the chirps object, you know, state object. So it'll just automatically be on the page whenever we add the new one.
Sorry, another question, but do you not include the ID in your build of the chirp card?
Yeah, I should actually. I think I actually will be receiving that warning like we talked about.
With the, yeah.
There you go. So it's looking for a unique key prop. And this is not anything that you're going to be able to really use or care about, but on each object that you create, just set a key and set it to chirp.id. And then this should go away. I hope. Yeah, there you go.
So you wouldn't do it on your component part, on your
No.
chirp card part.
Right.
You just add it in there when you call
You do
it.
it in the map. Yeah. Not in the component that you're doing it with. Because remember, the component is not, it's not concerned with having multiple of itself. It's just the template for one. The template for one of them, you know. All right, so now we're going to try, I guess I'll do a form just to make it confusing. And also to maybe show a few things, like you can still prevent default with a form and stuff. We'll just do a form, why not? And if it breaks, we'll fix it. Form action, I'm just gonna leave the action blank. 2 inputs. Do an input and a text area. I'm gonna take the name off. And I'll see if this works. All right, so now we have 2 inputs. This input here in the text area. These are going to be for my username. Oh wait, I don't think you can comment like that. I forget. This is the input is for the username, and the text area is for the body of the chirp, right? So we have to make these controlled inputs like we did the other day. So we're going to create more state values up here. I'll create these above since that state one is so big. Username, and then set username equals use state. State. Initial value will be an empty string. And then we'll do that again for the message. And you could call these like a new message or whatever makes sense to you, but I feel like that's pretty clear. All right, so we initialized 2 more state values up here. These are going to represent whatever they've typed in the boxes down here. I'll go ahead and tie the value property of all these value to the state values. I can't remember. I think a text area takes a value property. I'm really kind of, I might be wrong. Set that to message. Let's see if that works. And then we need to write our handler functions to handle the change as they type in the box. Again, I'm just doing this. Yeah, I mean, it's probably better to write handler functions instead of writing them in line. So do it the way that Luke showed you. Handle change equals, I think he said he just passed the event. And then you're going to set username with e.targets .value. the two handlers to update the state as they type in the box. Remember, we have to do controlled inputs so that React knows is in control of what's happening on the page. And then to call those whenever they type on these inputs, we'll use an on change. And so for this one's for the username. So handle username change, just pass it the function. Same thing over here. So that should be enough so far where I can go in and refresh and see if these inputs are working. So there we go. There's this. Those look great. Okay. Obviously a lot of styling work that we'd have to do here, but I just want to show you guys like the raw functionality. Don't negate the styling. Like we're going to be doing final projects. You can't negate the styling. It's really important, but I'm just trying to kind of skip that so that I'm not wasting y'all's attention on styling because we've covered that. Cool. So let's look at app. So app is my component where the state lives. Here's my two state values. If I type in these boxes, then that should change. And if I type in here, that changes. So we're good. So there's that. Any thoughts or anything on that?
Was that red exclamation point supposed to be on your app?
Definitely not.
Because that showed up on mine the other day whenever I was having laptop problems.
I'm not sure what this is saying. I click on it, it just goes to like strict mode. If it's saying strict mode, it might be saying like strict mode is a more strict version of React. It might be saying like, hey, this works, but you're making some design choices that are not good. Yeah. So if it's not throwing me an actual warning, I say, let's just not worry about it.
Okay.
So when you got chirp card key 1, 2, and 3, which you only put as IDs in your objects. So it automatically knows ID is key.
Right, because ID is just a property. It's just the key. I mean, I know it's reusing, like for an object, it's key value pairs. So it
But it knows that's key. ID equals key, essentially.
Yeah, essentially like, dude, it looks over map and it says, okay, I'm on the first one. What is chirp ID? It's 1. So it passes like I did a 1 right here. Yeah. It's just plugging in whatever the value is. Yeah, okay. All right, y'all. Any more thoughts and stuff? We're kind of chugging along.
Hey, Josh, then how does ID value get updated?
It does not. It doesn't.
So
Whenever
when you, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'd rather hear your question. Go ahead.
So then when you type in new username with a new message and click the button, then that new value, that new, what is that, object in an array doesn't have a value for ID key. So
right, we'd have to get to that. So either we cannot create like a counter. If you want to do it the super simple way that just works for this, like, you know, while we're learning, then I would just keep like a counter. Let me go back to my code. I would just do something like this. Essentially, I would create a state value that just is the counter, you know, and start this out at maybe 4 since I already have 3. So whenever I create a new one, I would just use whatever this is and then set ID count to whatever it is ++. And that's like the simple way of doing it. And then what Santita was asking about at the beginning was this UUID thing. This is a package that you can install in your React projects that will, whenever you call it like this, it will spit out a random ID like this. And this is more like a real world example of what you should actually do. Because then you're not, you know, if you set an ID to 4 in the whole life of this company that you're working for, that's going to be a problem. But if you do something like this is never going to be repeated, you know? So sorry for the long-winded answer. Yeah,
All right.
this is how you should do it. I'm going to try and do it like this. This is pretty easy. this package is pretty easy to use. So
You can do the same thing for Bootstrap, right? I believe.
how so?
I thought there was like an npm install for Bootstrap. Am I wrong?
Yes. Yeah, there is. There's pretty much a package for anything that.
Okay, and this saves you from having to have like multiple links in your HTML. I'm
Mhm.
assuming. Okay.
Yep.
There was like one video that Jake and Eric had shared that were like very, very helpful, but he got to a portion of it where he's doing the UID install and it just wasn't working. And then I had to do like so much Googling to try to find the correct one. And some of them had like a $sign and then install after the link. And like every single npm install link I found was like different. Some of them weren't working somewhere. Sorry if this is really confusing.
No, no, I was
in-
thinking dollars, like over here, it would be a $sign.
Yeah, no, like right before npm, and some of them didn't.
Oh,
And
oh,
I just
that's over here. It's like the $sign is, it's just a part of the terminal. Just ignore
okay.
the
So he was
$sign.
probably
Yeah.
okay. He was probably using
Yeah, no,
a
no.
different terminal than I was. So is there a way to see all the npms you have installed that didn't come with the React project? Is that in the JSON folder?
I don't know. It does. It's not going to differentiate them between which ones came with React and which ones didn't. But all your dependencies will appear in this object.
All right, because I feel
And
like
package
an
system.
issue I ran into was I installed a like out of date version of something, and then I linked the up to date version of it in my HTML. I think it was giving me like a lot of errors. So just making sure.
Yeah, when you're using like even this Bootstrap npm package, you could have problems with this. I mean, it's not perfect. Sometimes I'll just have you guys just go back to using the link and putting in your HTML, because when you're putting it like over here in your source folder and you're using it that way, it gets bundled together and that can cause issues. But that probably doesn't make any sense right now. So let's just get rid of this for now. I'll just go ahead and try and use, well, we're already on UUID and we're kind of there anyway. So I want to use a npm package. I need to stop my server. That's Control-C. That will kill any process that you're running that's keeping this terminal window busy. You can kill that process with Control-C. And then npm I for shorthand is install, if you want to, you know, spell it all out, but you can say I, and then the package name. So UUID, let me double check. That's what this actually was. I think it was a version number. So just UUID, cool. So UUID, that goes and installs this package. We should actually be able to see it over here now. So here's UUID, here's the version of UUID that I'm using. This up arrow means anything greater than this version, I think. I might be wrong about that. Back over here. And then usually on any NPM page, you'll have basic instructions for how to use it. So I import it like this. Import it like that. So any file that I want to use it in, we'll import it. Yeah, and then, oh. Somebody have a question with that?
Is there a way to pretty much auto do all of that install, like when you create the create app?
Create a React app.
Yeah.
You can shorthand installing packages. So if you know the ones that you're going to use just like already, or you could even create like your own, like you can create your own NPM packages. So you could kind of create React app and like create your own little custom version of it that you host for yourself. But it's really, I don't really think it's that tedious to, you know, just install a couple packages. Like if I knew I was using Bootstrap or whatever, I can just say Bootstrap, UUID, you know, whatever, just all the ones that I'm going to use. So that's probably how I would do it. Okay, so we have that. All right.
Do you not have to npm start again after you close out your terminal?
Thanks. Start that back up. Okay. What now? I'm gonna ignore that for right now. All right, so let's put a button in here, like a submit button. Let's see. Button. And then, yeah, we're just going to write a handler for it. So we'll say handle chirp submits. And then, yeah, so what I want to do here is the steps I'm going to take in this handle submit. I'm going to format an object to look just like all these other ones. And so let's say do chirp was that. And we're going to go in and say, okay, so this is where ID, here's where I use UUID. So I'm just calling it like a function like that. And that's going to return, like we saw in their documentation, a string, something like this. Now, this is not going to look like, well, actually, since we have this in here now, why don't we just go ahead and replace these all with UUID calls, and then they'll all be nice and fancy. And then if you want to just see what those look like, we can go over here and refresh. And then you can see what my keys, they're all, you know, quite different now. So that's kind of what that's generating. All right, but now we're making a new one. So they've clicked the button. We make a new chirp, give it a new ID. And now I need to set the property username. So I'll say username is username. Notice the highlighting difference. This username is the state value. So I'm creating a property, a new property on this object called username, and setting it equal to whatever username is at the time they click the button. And I'm setting a message one set equal to message, whatever they type in. Right? That step of separating the object creation out is going to help you kind of understand what's happening, and then set chirps. And then what I'm going to do in here is the reason I'm going to kind of do what I'm about to do in here is because if I set chirps to new chirp, this is not like array.push. You know, you think I could just say, you know, chirps.push or something like that, because it is an array, but it's a state array. Whenever you're updating a state value, you have to use the setter function, because if you don't, then React doesn't know that you've updated the state. And that's critical to how it all works. So when we do this, we're going to pass an empty array in and destructure or use the spread syntax to pass in all of the values that are already in the array, meaning chirps. So like that, pass in all of the old ones, whether that's 3 or they've already made 2, so it's 5, and then the new object at the end. And this way I'm not going to get rid of the old values whenever I'm trying to just add a new one onto the end. So do something like that. Last step is to on-click right here, and then handle submit.
With when you're calling handle chirp submit, do you have to put 2 parentheses at the end of the on? Oh, you don't, because it's a button, right?
Where would I put, like, to call the function?
Yeah, but if it's a button on click, you don't actually have to call the function. Is that correct?
Yeah, you see, it's actually the same. This is even the same for just vanilla JavaScript, like not even React. I'm just passing a reference to this function. You see, I'm not calling it.
Okay.
You might see it like this sometimes. If the function needs to be able to pass some kind of value to it.
Yeah, like if you're like
You might
adding
see.
things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or specifically, if you need to pass something other than the event object, because you see these 2 functions here, they take the event object. But if you pass something in an event like function, like on change, on click, on focus, whatever, it'll automatically get passed the events whenever it calls it. I don't have to do that. But if I wanted to say pass this some other state value or some whatever other crap, then I would have to do that like this. where this is like an anonymous ES6 function that calls handle chirp submits. So a little bit different. A lot cleaner if you just keep it like that though. So we'll keep it like that. Well, let's see if that even works. I think it should. Oh, that button looks good. Let's put some words. Say something cheesy like chirp it. Hey. And then type in here, and then hit chirp it. We did not get a new one. Did we? No. All right, what did I do?
It
It did for
flashed.
a fraction of a second.
Look at me. Forgetting the basics. All right, so in here we're getting past the event. So let's just say e.events defaults. Pass an e up here. Again, a single arguments or parameter. We can remove those. So we'll just do that. Why not? All right, let's see if that works.
I have a question related to how you set up your the e.target near the handle message. So I put my version of the handle username handle message change directly into the return. What would you say is best practice, to create functions outside and call them, or can I put them directly inside of my return?
Put them outside. Keep the return only with the functions that it needs to have. You know, so if you can put the handlers outside and keep the return clean, I think you should probably do it that way. I've done it that way too, just because I'm like hasty and trying to
Right.
do stuff too
You just want
fast.
something that works.
Yeah, you just get it to work, but you got to kind of push yourself to be organized and stuff. So I do it like this.
I also had a question.
So
When I was trying to code the event handlers for the form submit, I instead of using a regular or generic button, I used a input with a value of submit. And the issue I ran into is that I couldn't get the default behavior to be prevented, even with a call to prevent default. So after a lot of research and a trial and error, one thing that I did find out was working. One thing that I did one thing that I did figure out how to get it to work was by attaching the event handler for submitting the button to the entire form rather than the input. I was wondering if you could provide any insight into why that is. Is that because of the way event bubbling works?
Probably so. I mean, even if I have it on this button, I bet that event is, or the prevent default is bubbling up to the actual form itself anyway. And then maybe if you put it on that input, it might not, you know. That seems to be, that'd be
So
my
for the
best guess,
future, you would
honestly.
recommend using a generic button instead of
I've used
an
buttons,
input.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think that's clear anyway. Like the input type submit is more confusing. If it's a button, it's a button, you know. And
Okay.
it hasn't made any difference.
Thank
for
you.
me, so no problem. Okay. Cool. So we're getting a new one, and I can keep getting new ones. And again, this works because we're just mapping over the state values, getting new keys, no warnings. Cool. So let me go back up. Yeah, and with the components, I mean, I would probably separate, you could probably separate this out into the nav components and a submit chirp components or compose components. And then, you know, you could timeline components. So this could really just be components like separated out a lot, but maybe one that we can do. What's the next lab? It's the APIs and routing. So, all right. I don't know. Does anyone have any questions? Anything else?
I've
Haven't
like
been here that long.
tidbit
What's up?
stuff, like not like related to functionality, but like I was wondering, how can I import like a picture to React? It sounds simple, but
Yeah. So the thing that makes this like not simple, that's a great question, is that this is all getting bundled by Webpack. It's all getting like turned into like chunks of JavaScript that run everything. So you see all this. This is our JavaScript. This is what's running the page. You see how long this is? It's a lot of crap, but it makes everything work. So when you import an image, it's actually bundling it into this. And so you can run into some issues with that. Now, create React app works pretty well. So if you wanted to do that, you can just search create React app import image. And there's going to be a tutorial. This is the docs directly from React. So you can just import something like this. So you would import it, you give it a name here, whatever you want to call it. So let's just grab an image and like see what we can do. Let's do foreshadowing or something. This is my favorite logo of all time. Very simple. .svg.png. I'm gonna assume this is an SVG. I guess it's PNG. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, PNGs are just transparent backgrounds, right? Or am I wrong?
But I
You
should
have the
know that, but-
ability to do transparent backgrounds in PNG. That's why they're superior.
Okay, but you don't have to use the transparent background?
It just looks sleeker. I mean,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's how I've always thought about PNGs. What's an SVG?
It's like a vector graphics. It's like it's like a math thing. The thing with SVGs is that you can scale them up and down, and they don't lose any resolution. Like because it's
Does it
literally
just add
describing-
like black bars on the side of it if you scale it really tall vertically?
I think it only scales like to a ratio. You know, I don't know if you probably could do that, but
SVGs are commonly used to make it animations responsive.
All right.
Just downloading things and then
TacoKing.gif.
yeah, I gotta know what that is.
Yeah, hold on, stop. We gotta take a moment here.
No, I don't have time. There's no time. Okay.
Okay.
It's definitely not me just avoiding the question. So we'll be good and put like a assets Studio Ghibli in there.
So it has to
And
be in an
then-
assets folder. I can't just throw it
No,
in my
no, no.
components.
No. You could throw it in components, but it just gets disorganized, you know?
Gotcha.
Yeah. So then you just import it. So import logo, you know, I'd say studio, let's give it a good name. Ghibli logo from dot slash assets slash whatever I call this. Doesn't have to. I hope this works. I don't know if that PNG is going. And then anywhere that you want to use it, you can just set it as the source on an image. So like this image source equals logo in the curlies, and it's going to import image and it'll just magically work. Now, let me say, like I said in the first walkthrough, you don't have to use create React app to use React. It's just a way to kind of get one started quickly. And it's not going to have this feature where you can just import images and they just work. If it doesn't, then it's a struggle and it's difficult.
Why is the import logo grayed out? Cause I ran into that a lot where,
It's just saying that I'm not using this.
okay, so if it's grayed out, it means it's loaded in, you're just not actually accessing it with the website.
Mhm. Yeah, so you'll see that until you start using it. So put it here. It's image. Source equals Studio Ghibli logo. Alt logo for also sites.
So, sorry, this is a whole bunch of little questions. So if you had like multiple photos and like files and like, I don't know, like music or anything like that, you would have your own page for that, and then you would import all that. You would call that like, could you just import the entire assets folder onto app.jsx, or do you have to import every single thing specifically? Like, let's say you had 4 pictures, would you have to import 4 different photos, or could you just import like assets dot whatever?
Hey guys, make sure you're muted. I'm gonna mute you, Reed. I think you're good. I figure that it's based on the specific file.
So are there times where you would have like 20 things imported? That's pretty normal,
Yeah,
I guess, if you're, okay.
yeah, it can. Yeah, you can also like collapse. That's why like some of these have a collapse feature. You know, so you just don't have to look at it while you're coding. That's kind of handy. VS Code, you know, can do that. But there's
That way,
some
when
things
you
where-
got that way, when you got 100 lines of code all in one
Yeah.
function, you
you're
can
like,
collapse
you're
it.
like, can I just get rid of these imports? I don't need to stare at them all day. And also you don't have to scroll as far and stuff. So you can do that for whole sections, you know, state, this whole thing, collapse returns. Handy. Okie dokie. Yeah, what else? There's updating, there's, yeah, so we did that. Moment for timestamps, React icons. We'll do moment. I think we have time. Well, that'll be the last thing. All right, so moment is like a date formatter. You guys have worked with a date object, like the capital D, you know, the constructor date. It's kind of not great. It's honestly surprising how bad it is. It just feels like everything takes tons of steps. Moment is a separate external library that you can install that kind of does, maybe switch to a different library. Oh, that's interesting. Well, Moment still has 20 million weekly downloads. Apparently it's legacy now. So maybe when you guys are thinking about using it for real projects, you should look up something else. But it still is very popular. So we're going to use it. Control C, npm install Moment. It's just right, yeah. And then let's go to the documentation to see how to use it. I don't care about the status. Using it. Derp, derp, derp. ES6, we can do it like that. So while that's, yeah, okay, cool. I'll go ahead and start this back up.
Sorry, this is another weird question. Is there, so all these things that we're probably frequently going to be using, instead of constantly having to install them with the npm, is it possible to just have them already pre-added to your React anytime you start a new project, or is that bad practice to have like these things loaded in you might not use?
That's what Abigail was asking a second ago. I think there probably is. There definitely is. I don't know how to do it, but there's absolutely a way that you could do that.
Okay,
That might ask Luke about that. He might have a good recommendation.
all right.
Okay, so moment, and then whenever you're using a package, just make sure you're looking over the documentation to see how to use it. So we'll just do moment.format and see how that goes. I guess, I don't know, put that at the bottom, I know. So we'll see. Time. It's actually a terrible name. Let's say, let's call it created. Yeah, that'll be right. Maybe a little bit better. How is that like pasting backwards? Let's have a created, and then whenever we create a new one, we'll do the same thing. And then down here, we would use it inside of chirp card. So now this is going to receive a created prop. And we'll just try and put that in there. I don't know what that's going to look like. Sometimes if I start getting tons of props, I'll start breaking these down to a new line. Just to kind of clean it up a little bit. That might, something like that. It's And let's see what that looks like. It's probably not great. Yeah, so it's kind of a, you know, a lot. But that's with Moment, you can kind of format things. So that's just like the default format, and then we can kind of see. This is all that. That's the display. Yeah, that looks good. So I can format, like pass it a string with a, you know, specified format like this. So format is the default. This is what we're getting. And then if I want it to look something like this, you can just pass in a string with these values and just get good at like reading through documentation, you know, parsing out the little bits that you need, you know. And then as you get better and better, you can start looking through the package and actually know exactly how it works and everything about it. So when we format these, we'll pass in that string. That's a string. There we go. There's our image. It's pretty good.
Can I see at the
Okay,
top
then-
where you imported the moment thing again? Okay. It seems like it's like the comp, like you do the same thing when you like want to add something. It's like you have to import it, you put it in, and you also have to like do some npm stuff. Is that like common? Where it's like, if you want, at least for create React App, like that same process.
It's, yeah, specifically for like the web kind of environment or, you know, ecosystem. So like this is a package manager, and npm is the package manager. That's what it stands for, node package manager. So you can think of npm as like the JavaScript package manager. And then for other languages, that's why they had, and let me get the moment back up here. Did I close everything about that? What did I even just do? Yeah. Like they describe all these other package managers like NuGet and stuff like that. So Node.js, use npm. This is in the browser. You can use it like that. Bower is a package manager. NuGet is a package manager. So these are all ways to install this package. Then yeah, you just do like npm install whatever.
Would you like share a link of that website? Because I'm trying to get that.
Which
working. The moments.
Moment?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just momentjs.org.
Okay.
Momentjs.org/docs. And then I would probably start with this one, using Moment. So I'll paste this one in the chat. That's in the chat. I forgot I had this one. All right, y'all. Any more questions? Stuff? We're going to stop there. Obviously, this needs to be styled heavily, but that is its own work. You're still muted.
Oh, sorry.
You're good, man. Oh, that's my fault. Yeah. That is it. Any more questions, y'all?
Andrew said bootstrap to the rescue, and I completely agree.
It could quickly fix a lot of this, but I just want to stick to the functionality. Like as we keep going and keep doing walkthroughs with this, we're going to start styling stuff. But and I really want to stress to you guys, like, don't negate the styling. Like when you start doing your final projects and stuff, don't forget to style the project. You need to start with how it should look and then work your way forward. Because remember, we're like user focused. Someone's going to have to use this. Think if this was a real website, it would be garbage and no one would ever use this. So even if it works, it has to look nice. But just want to like focus on the functionality. So yeah, we're going to start working on the next lab, and it is using APIs. So we're moving on to reacting to APIs, this one. And in this one, we're going to be doing that data fetching like we were talking about, using promises and all that stuff, and just kind of taking that data and putting it on the page. So I'll let you guys start working on that, and we will check in this afternoon, okay? I keep moving things around.
What's the walkthrough
Yeah.
for APIs?
What is today, Friday? I think I probably Monday. It's probably when I put it.
Okay.
I can double check though. Let me stop sharing.
Will
It
we have
says
weekend-
Monday at 10:30.
Can we
What'd you
have
say,
like a
Roderick?
weekend? I was gonna ask, can we have like a weekend co-working space hour or something, since we're working over stuff on the weekend and
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well. Yeah, so we'll probably do one on Sunday. Let me think about it, and we'll talk about it in the check-in this afternoon, okay?
Thank you.
Word. All right, you guys have a good lunch, and we'll see you in the afternoon.
Thanks for the walkthrough.
Thanks, Josh.
Bye, y'all.
Yes, thank you.
Made my night worth of headaches in the hour and 30.
Roderick, did you get how to use Moment?
I did, but I wasn't able to implement it for today. So I was gonna just, I kind of figured you was gonna show, and then I was gonna just implement my own styling from there.
Yeah. Yeah, you see, it's not that hard though. You had it almost.
Yeah, I had to import it. It's just when I was trying to like put it like to get it functional, like get the functionality to us, like coming up on screen, I would like get red marks all over. So I just commented it out, and Haley got me to just get my basic back up this morning.
That's like the same exact issue I was having too, and I wasn't using the map thing when I was trying to like
Me either. I
reference a
forgot
whole
about
bunch of
that part.
stuff.
Josh, you scared the crap out of me this morning. I was not expecting you to be taller than me.
You're tall as shit, dude.
I know. That's why I was like, what?
You did look surprised. That's funny.
Wait,
Yeah,
did
me
someone
and- me
see
and
Josh
Jared are
in
like
person?
4 feet tall.
I had to go pick up a laptop
Oh,
because
yeah.
mine was not working.
He's saying
I've-
Ghost Josh.
I've been told that seeing Josh in person is like, doesn't happen ever.
It was like a
It's magical.
unicorn.
Alex told me that, Kaylee told me that. I keep hearing that, Josh, you're elusive.
That's funny because those are the two people that I've seen many times. I've seen them around.
Those are the only two people that
It's
just see
happened.
me a bunch of times.
I've had lunch with Alex 1,000 times. Well,
We just
I
weren't
guess,
invited. It's all good.
you weren't in
I-
class yet.
No, it's fine, man. It's
All
whatever.
right.
Y'all have a
See
good
how it
day.
is.